Hey everybody, it's Ray Bango again. I'm here at the Wicked6 Games, and I have a very special guest. I have Peder Jungck. He is the Vice President and General Manager of Intelligence Solutions for I'm tongue-tied, BAE Systems. So now BAE has a very special duty because we could talk about securing stuff, but you have to secure the nation. This is a big deal. This is not just, all right, let's secure some networks. You're securing some very complex systems, right?
Oh, definitely. I think one of the neat things and also the stressful things about working with the U.S. government is you get to play at kind of the highest level, get to play with the latest, greatest types of toys, but at the same time, it's like you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, we're helping support the end of the line.
Yes.
And so it's exciting, but it's also part of what, for somebody like myself in cyber, I'm like, there's no higher level game.
No, and it's a critical type of system because you're telling me that you're the president of the ITISA, so you're trying to secure also the election systems, and you're trying to help to make sure that those systems are working as expected and that we're getting the right results.
Yeah, so one of the big things, and BAE Systems has been big in this with regards to all the supply chain and working with a lot of different groups doing threat sharing. One of those is within the ISACs, and so for the Information Technology Group, we've been kind of a foundation member where it's on the board, and now been on as president of that, and that whole thing is how do we help companies share data on what we're all learning, both not just threat type stuff, but also how to work, how to do that, and that's where the elections equipment and infrastructure vendors have all joined that.
Gotcha. So how is BAE involved in the Wicked6 Games?
Yeah, so with Wicked6, myself and Don DeSanto were on the advisory board, helping the Cat's Eye team and women Cyberjutsu and that, getting this going. So helping to do whatever we can to sponsor, help get promotions out here and get everybody out, because I think if we get everybody caring about this, that's going to be the right thing to keep it going.
Absolutely, and the one thing that I think a lot of students might not be aware of is that there are opportunities within the government sector, but that don't necessarily fall within the government themselves. So I think BAE is a great example of that, where you have opportunities with these great contractors that provide really complex solutions and great opportunities, right?
Oh, definitely. About half of the workforce doing a lot of the mission type capabilities is coming from the private sector. Whether or not they're technology companies providing the supply chain, whether it's Microsoft where you're at or others, or the BAE Systems of the world, and that as we're out there to actually go in and work hand in hand with our customer, designing things ahead of time for meeting the gap between commercial and what the military's needs are, or helping perform that mission day to day. And it's a great place to come learn, because one of the things that's often hard is to see the whole landscape of government. And as we work in the supply chain, we can help somebody. You want to start in a federal civilian program, do it there. Would you like to go to a DoD one next? You want to do a different one? A lot of our employees, they can move around and get to see so many dimensions.
And that's great, because there are so many dimensions and so many unique opportunities. If you were going to tell a student right now, hey, that wants to explore these things, how would you guide them? What's the type of things you do?
The thing that will pull somebody through in cyber is passion. So the first thing is, make sure you realize there are hundreds of different types of jobs in cyber. Whether you're going to be dealing with policies, whether you're going to be dealing with, I want to go and exploit something to be able to figure out a weakness so I can then go tell a defender how to defend against that. Go figure out. You can be a software person, you can want to go deal with the operational aspects, to be the one up at night who gets to go and say, hey, wait a minute, we got to change something or document it. First, explore it, because if you can find that part that you love, that's how you can get from just being a part of the system to becoming an expert to being somebody who's like here at DEF CON and Black Hat presenting the next thing, where all the rest of us will go, why didn't we ever think of that?
So are these students, would they need specialized skills at all, or because obviously there's unique needs? I mean, as I was going through the BAA site, you're working with F-35s.
Oh yeah.
So this is not like oh, here's a small LAN and let's go try to secure it. There's very complex firmware, complex ICS and SCADA systems. Are there special skills that you look for that these students should be kind of considering?
Yeah, and I think this is where, in cyber, the different jobs have different dimensions. So F-35, for example, it is a digital aircraft. It part of how these new modern aircraft, and I'm not an aerospace person, I'm really bad at all the physics of, analog, but they go beyond the speed of what's flight stable.
Okay.
Without a computer, they wouldn't stay in the air. But that computer has the secrets. It's kind of like the Coca-Cola recipe. Well, you've got to go and make sure that you have things like anti-tamper, and so there's these kids that know how to do the sensors and all the other types of stuff too. How do you build the computer so that even with radiation, that thing keeps working? Yeah. There's all those, and so we look for those that are like, hey, they're great from that electrical engineer. They're great from kind of those that know control systems, or it's the software engineer, or the person who can even document the whole threat surface. And so that's where it depends upon the jobs, and I think that's where getting people to realize cyber is not one thing. It's kind of like we try and describe cloud. I'm going, are you talking business model? Are you talking something else? I'm like, cyber is not one thing. It is the hundreds, but then you got to find the talent that's good at that one thing, and if you got the passion, that's how they'll become great.
Gotcha. And I know you focus a lot on threat intelligence, which is so critical to all facets of business, the nation. In terms of learning more about that, I'm assuming things like machine learning and AI are probably really important for students to kind of consider. So if you had to mentor these folks back here they're kicking butt,
Yeah. They're amazing.
I wish I would have had this when I was a kid, but threat intelligence is such an important field. So what are the things that they need to think about if that's an area that's really important to them and they want to go to?
Yeah, and you mentioned, and threat intelligence is another dimension of cyber that's so broad. It's from figuring out, who are adversaries, to what is a piece of technology like software that's malware, and can you learn AI and have some machine learning algorithm that look at good executables, bad ones, figuring that out. But the whole key is, this comes back to, if you don't understand the offense, you're never going to be able to play the defense.
Right.
And that's where threat intelligence is sharing those techniques.
Gotcha.
It's kind of watching like the film on football. It's like, if you haven't seen what a West Coast offense is going to go do to you, your run game's going to lose pretty bad.
No, that's a great analogy. I know we were talking earlier, and we were talking football, and you're right. If you have a coach who's only teaching you how to do defense and you get a pass thrown at you, what are you going to do? You're like, okay, do I catch the ball? I'm not. It's kind of like that. You have to understand both sides. You have to know how to be that quarterback and throw it out. And if you're the linebacker, it's also good to know that too.
But this is also the exciting thing about being on the good guy team.
Yep. Because
we can share publicly. An adversary is going to go into the dark web. They're going to go to the underground. They're going to be like trying to sneak around with, here's this vulnerability. They want to go sell it. They want to get it so it can work.
Yeah.
And it might take them a year to find that vulnerability and go get that. But if they use it once and anybody on the planet knows it, and we share that, and we say, guess what? Watch for the quarterback to hand off the football, and they're going to sneak around to the right. It's like, and you teach every defender to look for it and say, you could stop it if you did this.
Right.
I'm going, that's basically what we can do with threat intel and having teams know, and if you see an adversary, get there. And it's kind of like what we do for phishing tests. Look, don't click this,
Right.
There isn't a Nigerian who's going to send you all that money.
Now, how do you set up these relationships where you can cooperate and share the information? I do know that a lot of companies, they feel like their threat intel or their TTPs they're proprietary. We can't share this. It's a competitive advantage, and I get that to some extent. But how do you make it to the point where sharing threat intel is actually viewed as a value add versus a competitive advantage?
Well, I think, I think you're right. It starts in the boardrooms from people realizing that cybersecurity is not a competitive advantage sport. And I think the banking industry found this out, and the legislation even went and mandated that they better have a sharing program. Otherwise, they can't go get those things done. But the issue is, no one company can understand the entire threat surface and have enough money to defend against every possible thing.
That's a good point.
But it doesn't cost a lot of money if I tell you, don't do X, Y, Z. Don't go stick your USB stick in that you found on the ground in your computer. It'd be really hard to come up with every way to do a threat, but if you can learn and somebody's like, oh yeah, that's best practice, I wouldn't do that now, that's great. And so that's where, if we can all defend, that just makes us all kind of at least equal from there. We should compete on our competitive aspects as a business. Now, then you get to, well, who do I share with? And a lot of times companies may get uncomfortable with sharing with the government doing those. And that's where, like in the National Council ISACs, which the IT industry and the IT ISACs part of, we were set up as nonprofits, fully funded by the member companies. That's where, BAE Systems joined. That's where I sit as a board member. Just make sure that it's really doing what we say is just between us companies, but a safe space between companies. No one company's got the thing on all the data. Just to do that. And there's more than 6,000 companies that are more than, dozens of ISACs, and that's what we do. But I think this is what we got to get people to even understand. Everybody needs to be a part of that.
Right. I know that the malware industry is really good at this. They do share a lot of information. You look at VirusTotal, great aggregator of signatures that people can upload and test out these files. So I think that's what you're kind of alluding to. You're trying to create I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, VirusTotal of threat intelligence. And how do we share that information?
If you want to undermine the adversary, turn the value of their weapons to zero.
Good point. Yeah.
If they can sell, they write a piece of malware that's going to go get them ransomware so that then they're going to go hold some company hostage. But if it's a minute after the first machine is ever found with that piece that the rest of the planet that doesn't work at, they get one computer. That should be our desire, is that there is only one thing that works. And that way then you defeat the value prop. If they got to work 1,000 hours to get one PC, you're going to put them out of business. And that's what we need to do as defenders.
Love it, love it. Well, Peder, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Love this. Threat intel is, it has a special place in my heart because I want to win. I want companies to be defended. I want, obviously, our nation to be defended. So thank you for sharing this information with us.
No, thanks. I enjoyed the time.